Welcome to Heart, where we break the silence, bridge the gaps, and bring real conversations about mental health to the forefront. I'm your host, Lee Yaffe, founder and director of The Long Short Road. Hi, Sally. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such
You
a pleasure to be here.
you were having such a great pre-session
Yes.
conversation. I said, okay, we just need to hit
Let's
record.
get let's get it all in. Yes.
Um, Thank you so much for being here. I'm
Yeah.
really grateful. I have your memoir here.
Oh, thank you.
I just want to tell you, when I read A Brilliant Attitude, I got through it in 2 hours on a flight from Philadelphia to Florida. I was on my way to teach a series of suicide prevention classes, and I was sitting next to an entire group of people who were on their way to a cruise. So I was going for work and they were going for pleasure. And I'm just reading,
Bawling.
I'm bawling my eyes out. And the guy turned to me and, this older gentleman turns to me. He's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Listen, I'm a suicide prevention educator. Do you know how I'm crying from hope right now?" And I really like, I mean,
Oh,
I already cried before we started recording, but I'm crying
okay.
already now that part of the reason I was so excited to have you on the show is to me, your story is one of hope and resilience.
I'm so happy that that's how you saw it and that you're letting me know it because that's how I feel. I did not, a lot of people, when they've read my book, even people that know me and knew me during this phase, not my childhood, but knew me during those years that I was Dan's patient, they sort of have to feel like they're walking on eggshells. Like if they say the wrong thing, I'm just going to fall apart. And it's just so the opposite. I didn't shed one tear writing this book because this book came from a place of joy, really, of truly in the most interpersonal neurobiology fashion, having made sense of my story.
Mm.
And it's just a joyful place to be. It's a joyful place to be. I don't think of myself as, I know I survived my childhood and had great therapy, but I don't think of myself as a survivor. Yeah. I think of myself as in attachment, I guess you would say thriver. Yeah.
Which having read the memoir and knowing a little bit about what your childhood experience was like
Mm.
from what you shared in the book,
Yeah.
that is what is so, that's why I'm already emotional. It's like
Yeah.
if you could be sitting in the place that you're in today and saying, I wrote a memoir about my childhood trauma and abuse
Yeah.
and healing from that from a place of joy.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
and okay. So I think one of the really interesting things about my healing was, for the statistics show or data shows that most people that actually have DID do not receive a diagnosis until 7.5 to 12 years, or 7 to 12.5 years in that period to get a diagnosis.
wow.
And typically that's because, and there have been more than one therapist, right? I met Dan. Within 3 months, he diagnosed me.
Wow.
Our work was done, our DID work was pretty much done. I mean, I was fully integrated within 7 years. And then I worked with him a total of 10 years because the next three was just kind of, now what do I do? Right? So that early intervention and a therapist, and remember, Dan was 34, I was 37. He hadn't written a book yet when I first started working with him. He hadn't formed interpersonal neurobiology, but it's certainly how he thought. It was the way he understood how my mind worked or how the mind works, and his presence in that room was just, that's what it was. It wasn't anything that no one's ever thought about before, really. It's the embodiment of understanding how to be with clients or patients and understanding about neuroplasticity and how the mind works and integration. Yeah,
And, the title of the memoir is A Brilliant Adaptation, which is something
yeah,
that Dr. Siegel said to you about DID.
that's right. He said it about multiple personality disorder, which is what it was called, which to me meant I was crazy. Which is what I was worried about anyway. And he said, no, not crazy. He said, first, I think he said it's just the opposite of crazy. In fact, I think it's a brilliant adaptation. Yes. And
So,
that just framed everything. There was no negativity
right. And
from him.
and that's something that I said this before we started recording, and this is why we were like, okay, let's start recording.
Okay.
This is something that I personally don't struggle from this. I struggle watching other people struggle with this experience of living with very challenging mental health
Hmm.
challenges and not having a relational space therapeutically
Yeah,
be able to, which is so counterintuitive to what it means to, I think, right? What's the purpose of therapy?
that's right.
So
Yeah,
it's kind of this interesting tug of war. It's like, but I a question that I have for you is, could you explain in your own words the meaning behind a DID being a brilliant adaptation?
yeah.
And I guess
Okay.
from a interpersonal neurobiology
Mhm.
perspective as well, what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, for me, I know it means a lot different things to a lot of people, but for me, what it meant was, when I first met Dan when I was 37, I had no idea that I had DID. I didn't really even think of myself as somebody who was having a lot of trouble or emotional issues. Um, but of course, in retrospect, it's because I didn't know any different. I never felt fully present. I mean, I couldn't even know then that I didn't feel fully present because I didn't know what that meant. But I always felt a little like removed from the situation, removed from myself. I had big memory gaps. I never had extreme stuff like I never woke up in another city or town and didn't know who I was and was with people I didn't know. That never happened to me. But I felt I was very productive. I was able to get through life. I got myself, I got out of that family and I was creating a life for myself. And then when I adopted my son, so my husband and I traveled to Romania to adopt our son, and he was 16 months old. And it was almost the second that we got there to adopt him, I started just being filled with all kinds of, well, first of all, it was phenomenal terror. Like I was just terrified. And at first I thought it had to do with, it didn't seem that strange because we were in a country that 6 months before it had a violent bloody revolution and it was a country, extremely, a terrible dictator had ruled them and would terribly, I mean, it was a ravaged country emotionally. So I thought some of it had to do with that, but it was just so heavy, and my husband didn't feel it at all. And then after I got back to the States, I started having more and more feelings that made no sense, physical sensations, sexual sensations that I just like, it was creating a sense of shame just kind of walking around. I hadn't, I mean, and then I know that I'd had those kinds of feelings sometimes when I would visit my parents, but I thought there was something really wrong with me, right? I didn't think that it was, I thought it was weird. That's, I think, was what I thought. So having DID for me meant that I really didn't know who I was or where I came from,
Mhm.
right? And so in a lot of my life, I feel like I was flying blind. I think I was very lucky that I landed in some really good places with some really good people, including the man I was married to, who was just solid, incredibly good and loving and supportive and stuck with me throughout the whole therapy. But DID was very I felt confused all the time, even though I was in college and I was doing well. I sometimes didn't I sometimes couldn't remember what I knew, like, or I would sometimes take tests and I would be blank because I didn't have that information. So it was just confusing and it was hard work. I had to really work hard to be able to get through. But I never had, until I started in therapy, really had the experience of having ideas that there were different states of mind inside me that had different ways of handling situations at all. Yeah. But I know that I did. I mean, as I started to look back on my life, yes.
And when you were able to put word to that, what did that
Yeah.
feel like? Was it shocking? Was it affirming?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So when Dan first said, Sally, I think what you have, because what had happened was I was starting to come to therapy and didn't remember that what had happened in our last session. I knew I had been in our last session, right? And it wasn't like I'd forgotten. It was like I knew I'd gone to therapy and left therapy, but I didn't have any memory of me in therapy. And so Dan was already, having seen this, right? And so I was really having a lot of anxiety because it's like, what's going on with me? And he finally said, I think I'm ready to tell you. And I said, if you're ready to hear. And I said, yeah. And he said, I think what you've got going is something called multiple personality disorder, which is what it was still called in 1991. And the only thing I knew about that was from this movie Sybil, and which I'd seen in college, a TV movie. And that didn't resonate at all with me, right? Because the way they did it cinematically, I don't think was very accurate. At least it wasn't very accurate of my experience. But once I kind of got over that, I felt relief. Now I know that there's something that I have that I've got to figure out what it is, gave a name to it. It was a shock to my system. It was upsetting, and I didn't know how to talk to my husband about it. So Dan really helped with that. But Dr. Siegel never talked about it in any way except that it was a brilliant adaptation. It was what saved me. It protected me. That even though I didn't know the exact story yet, he said, I feel certain that we are going to find out. That's what we're here to do together. He couched it in such positive approach and with such compassion and complete acceptance of anything I brought, that even though sometimes I felt like I was going to die or it was just the end of the road for me. And I don't mean it necessarily in a suicidal way, just like dead ends. He never saw it that way. He would, certainly validate my feelings, but he would also remind me often that the things that I was feeling had already happened and they weren't going to happen again. And for us to make sense of those things was what was going to ultimately free me from the prison that was my childhood. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, it does. And I have more questions I want to ask on that, but I also want
Okay.
to I want to set the stage up for the list. I say this often jokingly, but I call myself the unofficial self-proclaimed president of the Dan Siegel fan club. I think if anyone could really get that title, it's you, Sally. So but but so for the two of us that you really have the background now as a therapist in interpersonal biology, my entire organization is really run through the framework of IPMB.
Right.
But for the people who are listening who are not well versed in IPMB or don't really understand what it is, if you were sitting how would you explain it to someone at a dinner party? Because I think that understanding what IPNB
Yeah.
is listeners who are trying to, because they're regular listeners are thinking, well, what information am I going to get out of here about how I can heal my own trauma? I think we first need to set up that what's
Okay.
so how would you explain IPNB?
Okay.
And
I just want to read a very short paragraph from Dan's foreword to my book, because to me, this is what this and this he's talking specifically about me and dissociative identity disorder, but the gist is for all, I think, mental health issues, right? So what he says is this unique offering reveals how our minds are shaped by our relationships, the traumatic ones early in life, leading to a fracturing in how our emotions, thoughts, memories, and even sense of self can become disconnected as a dissociative identity. This powerful adaptation of dividing the mind in order to conquer an overwhelming family experience also remains open to growth and change through the healing power of relationships. So, what I'd like to say is anybody who's dealing, or everybody who's dealing with mental health issues, and especially well, even if it doesn't come from family, that most like, many cases, something, especially if it's a big T or little t trauma, happened probably interpersonally. It happened through some kind of relationship. And so the damage that that does to a human can also be healed by healthy relationships. And for me, of course, it was with this incredibly wonderful therapeutic bond that I formed with Dan Siegel, but it is relational. And when you start to understand that it's relational, it makes it, I think, it a little bit more simply. It's about me, internal reflection, looking inside, and having a safe person that I'm connected to, that I feel safe with no matter what. Even if I do nothing, if I say nothing, that person is just going to be there and understand and help me stay connected to me. So, from an interpersonal neurobiology, I think one of the biggest the headline for that is that, what Dan talks about is the myth of the solo self.
Hmm.
We are not just our embodied mind. We are also relational. So really understanding the interactions between us and, people, organizations, the world, this is what we want to really pay attention to for our well-being.
Right.
Right? And then, but also interpersonal neurobiology, it's not just, it's, as he says, it's not a form of therapy, it informs therapy. And I can't think of one book that Dan's written, or really any of the books in the interpersonal neurobiology library at Norton, which, aren't all. I mean, Steve Porges's books are in there. There's lots of, different disparate ways of thinking, but they all come under this consilient dome of what interpersonal biology is, which is to come to a better understanding of humanity and how the mind works and relationships, and how no matter how different we are as a human, as a family, that it's we maintain our I use this example with couples. We maintain our differences, right? We do not have to change, but we become linked. And what I talk about is that we become linked in a way that even when we're disconnected, we remain linked.
Right.
And that's with ourselves as well.
Right.
So
Right.
it's really, yeah.
The words that comes up a lot in IPMB is integration. That
Yes.
we're not meshing together,
No,
taking different parts, of inner self, of community, and making it one.
that's right. Or making it not,
Or maybe
it's
not
not,
making it one, making it
it's a,
whole.
it's a fruit salad, not
Right?
a
Not
smoothie.
a right.
Right. Yes. Yes,
Um,
exactly.
and what's interesting for me is, when again, like so much of the classes we teach, the work we do is informed by IPNB. And what's interesting is sometimes people underestimate that relational, how
Yes.
big that people are like, that's it?
That's it.
That's the recipe?
Yes.
I'm like,
That's
yeah. When people we get a lot of different types of callers to our warm line, not a hotline because it's not crisis, but warm, 'cause it's emotional connection, right? And
yeah.
so sometimes parents will call, unfortunately, after their child has made a suicide attempt, and
Yeah.
they're really trying to grapple with, well, what do I do next? Right? And beyond, of course, all the therapeutic support and all of the modalities and all of the psychological help they're going to need, one of the areas that we focus on is, well, what about the relational safety at home?
That's right.
And it's like I'm awed sometimes by how people dismiss that as being such a necessary piece for healing,
Yeah.
but is the if you don't have that, then nothing else works.
No,
Be in
exactly.
therapy for 25 years. If you go back to an environment that's not
Yeah.
relationally safe,
5 or 6, it's probably been 5 years now. Dan and I did a course, or he did a course on disorganized attachment and dissociation. And I ended up joining him for it. And he did a lengthy interview with me about the work we did together. It's the first time we'd ever done it. We'd ever even really talked about our work since we did the work. But before, what led to that was it was during the pandemic, and he was doing a lot of stuff online, and I was taking everything because I'm, a passionate student of interpersonal neurobiology, and there's no better teacher than him. Every course that in all of the ones that I did, there was probably three or four, and none of them were about dissociation. None of them were really about trauma. There's a lot of attachment, of course. And DID and dissociation kept coming up. And at one point I remember texting him live during the thing and not ever imagining that he would, notice it in real time. I said, I'm so glad you were my therapist because it was so clear how so many therapists have such a misunderstanding of DID.
yeah,
And I just remember thinking really positive outcome and fully healing from DID was his positivity and his ability to stay connected to me because he understood that what was going on with me wasn't dangerous to him, right? Even though I was terrified, and I was terrified of letting certain states of mind out to talk to him because I thought they were going to hurt him or hurt me, and he just didn't ever think that was going to happen. I don't think, or feel like it was something that he couldn't handle. And that's because he understood, in my opinion, that the states of mind, and from an integration point of view, this is so essential and very interpersonal neurobiology based, that my different states of mind, my dissociated states of mind, are not nouns, they were verbs. Right? They were the thoughts, the memories, the sensations. They are what held my whole story. And so there were all these differentiated, extremely differentiated, dissociated self states that held my story. And I needed to come to know that story. I needed to be able to make sense of my story. And that's how it unfolded. And it was even when I was terrified a lot, and I have asked him since then, was he ever terrified? Because I thought maybe he was terrified. He just didn't, let me know. He said he wasn't. He was just solid. He was solid in his knowledge and his ability to be present. Yes.
Again, I think the key
Yes.
is, we have one of the taglines, and I have the sticker? Yeah, one of the taglines in the organization is I'm not afraid of the word suicide. You can talk to me. I think we should have a sticker that says I'm not afraid of DID. You could
Yes.
the other, because people, I think that sometimes labeling the mental health issue or giving it naming it and giving it a condition is helpful and necessary for the healing.
Yes.
I think sometimes therapists and patients get married to the pathologizing the issue.
Yes. And if you think about DID, it's not pathology, right? What's pathology is the situation that created it, the family environment,
Right.
right? So what a brilliant adaptation means, which is what Dan called DID for me, or what was going on with me. I mean, imagine, this happened between the, birth and year 7, right? And that my mind was able to figure out a way to make it so that I could endure whatever I had to endure at night, which was when most of it happened, and then get up in the morning and go have breakfast and sit at the table with whoever had been hurting me the night before and be okay and get up and go to school and learn and, get on with my day. I mean, it's just, and if we could, especially to even be able to harness the understanding of that for mental well-being in the world, it's something we really need to embrace, not be afraid of, and certainly not shut down by telling clients that they can't dissociate in session, which I hear all the time people with DID tell me.
Right. And they get threatened.
Yes, it'd
The,
be like
the
saying,
therapeutic relationship ending if they do.
that's right. And shaming.
How
Like,
is how is
yeah,
that? Um,
it's the whole
I,
point.
I try not to like have these, but sometimes I just want to get on a soapbox and yell. How is that therapeutic?
Yes.
Not.
It'd be like saying, I can't work with you. I can't help you with your depression if you're depressed in session. I mean, I don't
Right.
see that as
That,
much different.
that,
Yeah. I mean,
and
yeah.
and that's something, it's for me one of the most interesting experiences for me really looking at this from the perspective of working majority of the last 10 years with people who are at high risk for suicide
Yeah.
is like shocking it is to people when myself or our volunteers on our team are not scared of them when
Yes.
they talk about their plans for suicide or not that we're encouraging it in any way,
Yeah.
but we're also not telling them you have to shut this part of yourself off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't
Let's
bring this,
embrace it.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And people are sometimes shocked. They're like, you let them talk about this? It's like,
Yeah.
well, what else are they supposed to, how
To
are they,
do with it. Yeah.
if making sense, they have to be able to make sense
Yeah.
of where this is coming from. They can't do that if they don't have a safe place to land.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, you have to be able to, and as a therapist, you have to be able to go there. And, if somebody needs to be hospitalized for safety, that's one thing. But it's not, I mean, so therapists have to be able to accept that maybe they're not able to help.
Right.
But to be afraid of this as opposed to cautious and creating safety, however that looks in the client in the clinical room, in your as a therapist, or getting them help at the hospital or some other level of help. If you're like me and I'm an LMFT, I'm not an MD, I can't hospitalize people, I can't prescribe medication, but to see them as options and part of the treatment plan, not something that now I can't work with this client anymore because it's too scary for me. And that's where also interpersonal neurobiology comes in. Why am I so afraid of something so I mean, it is scary, but it doesn't have to be something you're afraid of. It can be something you can hold. But you, as a therapist, you do not have to bring it home with you. You know, that's burnout. You want to be able to have an ability to join with your client, but not become your client. Again, differentiated but linked. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, and I so funny when I had Dr. Siegel on the show, I said this to him, and I'm going to say this to you as well. I feel so grateful to be alive in a time in history where the information is accessible to us and the
Yeah.
work is available to us. And I guess the entry point to my next question is like, how can we, or like, do you have a message for therapists on how they can maybe feel more empowered to enter their work with, maybe higher or even not even higher risk clients, just,
Yeah.
even couples to present with more relationality because I can't believe how often I hear that that's missing.
For me, I think it was like it was our first or second, it was in our first few sessions. So I'm okay, so imagine this. I'm a person that's just adopted this baby boy. I have a wonderful marriage. I love my life. I'm living in LA. I live at the beach. Everything's great. Yet I am walking around with this sense of terror that any minute I'm just going to be annihilated, right? I wouldn't have even then been able to articulate. It was just this feeling. And I also then started having feelings. I was having sexual sensations, right? As if I was being sexually aroused sometimes, which is pretty common from what I understand from talking to other people with DID. But I didn't know I had DID. I didn't even know at that point that I came from an abusive family. I knew my family was scary to me, but I didn't think it was bad. I was still visiting them, right? And the feelings would be intense when I was with them. I just thought I was crazy. So when Dan and I started talking a little bit about this, one of the first things he taught me was the meaning of implicit memory. I teach this to my clients immediately and all my friends, right? So implicit memory, when we have memory is encoded two ways, explicitly and implicitly. When we retrieve an explicit memory, we know it's coming from our past. There's no confusion. This is what happened last night, 10 years ago. It's a memory. But when our brains retrieve an implicit memory, we don't know it's coming from our past.
Mm.
And it can be a memory, a feeling, a sensation, a mental model, how I am in the world or what the world is. But we don't know it's coming from our past. We think it's what's happening now, right? So and it's not subconscious or unconscious. The awareness of whatever this is, feeling, memory, sensation, is 100% in conscious awareness. That it's from our past is not.
Mm.
Right. And in the case of DIDs, because we don't know about our past, right? Because that's the reason DID was formed. So I think this for therapists, this is so essential. So if I'm sitting with a client, Dan talks a lot about this. If I'm sitting with a client, me, Sally, now as a therapist, and they say something and I get a weird feeling, or I'm like, I have to, really monitor yourself a bit. I have to, instead of thinking, oh, this is dangerous, they're doing something. I mean, unless they're coming at me to kill me, which, has never really happened to me as a therapist, which when you're training, they really kind of scare you a little bit, right? Anyway, that's a whole other topic. But if I get that feeling, I have to take a little beat with myself and say, where's this feeling come from? Right? This kind of feels to me like maybe it's really nothing to do with this client. This is something inside of me. And I may not be able to figure it out right now, but I'm going to look at this. I'm going to get supervision, talk to my own therapist, whatever resources I have to help me figure it out. And a friend of mine years ago that I said this, I was explaining to her about implicit memory. It's just that's what made me feel like I wasn't crazy when I learned about implicit memory. It made sense of everything, all these feelings. But I was telling this to an old friend of mine, a girlfriend, and she said that sounds like something we say in Al-Anon. And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "In Al-Anon, we say if I'm hysterical, it's historical." And
Uh,
I just love this, right? And so I use it. It's like, and it doesn't have to be hysterical. So I just think if it's a reaction or a feeling that doesn't fit the situation, I'm like going, why am I feeling that? It doesn't fit this. I have to look inside. This is coming from me,
yeah.
not from my client. And this is really important in parenting, right?
I was, you took the words out of my mouth. I was
Yes.
you know how many times there will be something that happens between me and my daughter, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not reacting to my 6-year-old. I'm reacting to something that happened when I
Yes.
was 6.
Yes. Or your parents' model of parenting, which is not, I mean, I'm not,
Necessarily right. May not
not
be
the yardstick anymore, right?
that
Yes. Yeah.
it. Yeah, I think, I teach a parenting program that's, a lot of the material and a lot of the research comes from parenting from the inside out and the power of showing up. And it's it's like a little bit of a jarring experience for parents when they realize that really ultimately I think the work of helping their children is really the work of helping themselves,
100%.
right? But the looking in the sometimes people just can't, they're not ready to look in the mirror.
No. Well, it's funny. I just wrote a blog about this. I have a blog on Substack, and I think I'm publishing it on Sunday, and it's exactly like this. And because like on that second or third session with Dr. Siegel, because I went to him because I was terrified there was something wrong with my son, that I was so afraid all the time that maybe, oh my God, there's something wrong with Sam. Who was eight, he was a year, a little over, he's almost two probably by then, and he was doing great. And so Dan said to me, he said, Sally, what do you think the most robust predictor of how children are going to do in life is? How they're going to grow up to thrive, not just survive? I said, I have no idea. He said, the most robust predictor, this is straight out of attachment research, is the degree to which that child's caregivers have made sense of their own story. And this like really upset me because I thought, I know nothing of my story. I mean, what am I going to do to my son? And he said, "Well, this is exactly the work. We need to make sense of your story. And the more you understand your story, the more you're going to be able to understand Sam's story
Mm.
and help him." And one of my favorite parenting stories, which I don't think is in the book, but I think I talked about it in this blog, is when Sam was 6, and I was deep into therapy around my DID with Dr. Siegel. I picked Sam up from school, and Sam was flourishing. I picked him up from school one day and we went home. We were walking through the house and he just stopped in his tracks and he said, Mommy, I need to tell you something. And I said, What's that, honey? He said, Mommy, at this, I'm going to cry. He said, Mommy, sometimes I feel like I'm the loneliest little boy in the world. Now, I wasn't a therapist, right? I had no idea what to do with it. I didn't know what it meant. Of course, it scared me, right? Because I'm scared about, oh my God, what if there's no more Sam? So I saw Dan, soon, maybe the next day. And I told him, and he said, Well, he said, I know that you and Paul, Sam's dad, have been very open with Sam about his adoption, Romania, all of that. I said, Yeah. He said, but I don't think that you've shown him any of the photographs, which I don't know if you remember, but it was in the news with these babies in these orphanages in Romania after they were, and they were just warehouses of babies in these little tiny cribs. And I have pictures of that at Sam's orphanage of Sam in one of those cribs.
Wow.
And I said, No, I've never shown them to him. And he said, Well, what would you think about showing him those? And I said, It terrifies me. I mean, won't that just damage him? How can he ever make sense of that? And it's the most incredible parenting advice. He said, Sally, your job as Sam's mom isn't to protect him from the truth of his story. It's to help him make sense of it. And he's told you he sometimes feels like he's the loneliest little boy in the world, and he doesn't know why, but you do know why. So your job is to help him
Wow.
understand it.
Oh,
Right? Yes.
number 5 that I'm
Yeah,
crying
I know.
for.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I just, you know, it's so interesting to me because I think often as parents, the feeling is we have to protect our children from things that they're picking up on. It's not like the fact that Sam said that to you at 6, his body knew something that his mind didn't.
Yes.
And like we
Imagine if I had said, What do you mean you're the loneliest little boy in
right,
the world? Hey, mommy, daddy, all our friends,
we
everybody,
have an amazing life.
you live at the
What is
beach. I
that,
mean, for
right?
God's sakes, right?
Which
Yes.
is
Yeah.
that's the,
Yeah.
I think I can't speak for anyone else. I can only speak for myself. The hardest part of parenting my daughters
Mm.
is staying open enough to hear what they have to say
Yeah.
and then be able to drop in and hold that space,
That's right.
even if my gut reaction is to be like, what?
Or to fix it,
Or to,
Yeah.
right. And that's what I think, again, like it's so interesting when when people I did a cohort of our parenting program for a group of moms in the winter, and one mom really came in with like the intent of like, okay, so how am I, what's the magic sauce? Like what are the steps I follow to
What are
fix,
the steps?
to fix my relationship with my teenage child? And I was like, well, it starts with, part of it is, you really have to understand what's going on for you.
Yeah,
Because when she's telling you things that hurt her, and you're looking at it through the lens of your unresolved stuff from your
yeah.
childhood, then you're going to project your own pain on me,
Onto
right?
her.
And it's
Yeah,
just this like never ending
yeah.
cycle.
It's that internal work and it's implicit memory on, I mean, even if it's not deep implicit memory. So when parents respond, okay, this is another thing out of attachment theory, and I just wrote about this all on my blog, but so it's very fresh in my mind. One of the things that we know from attachment research is that a relationship between a child and a parent, right, is a reflection of what the parent offers the child, never what the child offers the parent.
Mm.
And and I sort of think that's why therapists have a job is because so many parents, myself included, get that wrong, right? That if my kid says I'm the loneliest little kid in the world, I can't tell him that's not true, right? Or I can't think, oh my God, I've been a terrible parent. They're telling me I'm a terrible parent. I have to really be, I mean, I can have all that, but I have to work that out on my own. My job is to connect to that child and to understand their inner world and help them understand their inner world. And if my inner world is a chaotic mess, I'm not going to be able to do that. But you don't have to be completely figured out. I certainly wasn't. I had DID and didn't know it when I brought this child home. It's a lifelong process. And you can do it even when you have giant challenges. You've got to do the work and you have to read. And I would say read everything. I can't think of one book, as I was saying, in interpersonal neurobiology library that won't help you, even if it's not a parenting book. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Total agreement. I mean, I literally keep multiple copies of some of the books in my house so that when I have people come over, I'm like, here, you
Read
won't
this.
say it if I just send you the link. So I'll just give you an extra
Yeah.
copy.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Um, it
It's so
really,
comprehensive.
it is. And it
Yeah.
just, it, I'm curious. I know this is like going in a different direction, but just something I was thinking about. I was like going back and reviewing parts of the memoir in preparation for today, and something that was interesting for me was you writing about your experience in grad school and
Yes.
how kind of jarring it was to see, having come from such a relational connected place with Dr.
Yeah.
Siegel and really coming to understand DID for what it is and coming to
Yeah.
understand trauma for what it is,
Yeah.
to then be met in like the hallowed halls of a graduate school program to be
Yeah.
told that you're wrong.
Yes.
Um,
It was
I,
a shock.
like kind of being armed, so to speak, with IP and B going into grad
Yes.
school. Like, what was that? That's,
So it didn't, I don't even think I don't, well, we must have been calling it interpersonal neurobiology by then, but it was very new. So none of my teachers knew it, even though I was in LA. It wasn't at UCLA. So I was inspired to go to graduate school to become a therapist because of the work I did with Dan and, and my son and all of that. And it was such a wonderful outcome. And I was so excited. And I loved grad school. It was absolutely a good time in my life. But I kept waiting for them to teach me about the mind,
mm,
right? I kept waiting for them to teach me about trauma in a way that wasn't like it's a horrible, like it's, I kept waiting for them to talk about mental well-being,
right,
not mental, pathology,
right.
but it was all pathologized. I mean, I had a few glimmers of teachers in there that were a little bit, seemed to be a little bit more cutting edge. But I also knew I kind of had to keep my mouth shut because I was new and I was still, I was still seeing Dr. Siegel as a patient. I was, I was trying to figure myself out still. And I didn't feel comfortable because of the stigma around DID, which I don't feel there's a stigma around DID anymore. I know it's still out there, but I'm happy to
Misun-
talk about
It's
it.
still misunderstood.
So
I
yes,
think
it's completely
still
misunderstood.
kind of have this. I mean, you said this word in the book, so I feel comfortable saying it, but kind of looking at it like a freak show thing.
Yes,
Oh,
totally.
there's something
Yes.
really wrong with you.
Yes. I
So,
mean, like
right,
you're a
that way,
freak.
Right.
And you're probably crazy and you might even be, a murderer,
Right.
like an axe
And
murderer,
unhealable. I
unhealable.
think is the theme that I keep
Yeah.
hearing from people who have received this diagnosis is like tough
Yeah.
luck. This is the card,
Yep. Yeah. You're
that's
never going to be okay. You're never going to not have this. And
which
that's
is
just,
why I cried on that airplane to Florida because people ask me all the time, like, isn't it exhausting to work with people who are so high risk all the time? I'm like, but you know what? They're not high risk
they're
forever.
not, yeah. Or all the time.
Time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was, I think, you know, the first time I ever did a crisis intervention was with zero back. Like I went into suicide prevention because I did an intervention with zero background, and then was like, I got to figure out what to do about this.
Right.
But I remember how the person who I had done the intervention with was so broken about their desire to. We were at like a weekend retreat,
Wow.
right? I spent hours speaking with this person, and she, was crying into my shoulder. And then we were able to go, like, I think we went to an escape room that night,
It's,
right? And people were
yeah.
like, well, if she was really suicidal, she wouldn't have been able to like beat the
Oh, what
escape room. Like
really
that's
suicidal.
right.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
like really, and it's like, well, again, brilliant. Our brains do brilliant things to help us survive.
That's right. I mean, well, that's the brain's job is to
Right.
keep us alive. It's really the main purpose.
Right.
Yeah. And to pathologize our brains for doing their job extraordinarily, is just wrong. Yeah.
It
And
really,
not helpful.
wow. I'm curious, you know, now being, well, you went back to school to become a therapist at what age?
I was in my mid 40s.
Wow.
Yeah. I didn't really start practicing because I had to take a leave of absence for a while because my son got diagnosed with a learning difference. So I had to move around a little bit to get him the help he needed. So I didn't really start practicing. I didn't start my private practice until I was in my early 50s. And I'm 72 now. I've been a therapist for about 20 years now.
I'm curious about two modalities specifically.
Okay.
One is the wheel of aware, well, modalities, practices. One is the wheel of awareness,
Yeah.
which I try to practice regularly, but I
Yeah.
also am a mom of three little kids. I don't know if you saw my daughter peek her head through the
Oh
curtain.
no. No.
It was like, oh, there's my baby's face.
Yeah.
Um,
So
but the
sweet.
other thing that I'm really curious about, kind of take, not that I, not taking a step away from interpersonal neurobiology, but one other thing is MBSR.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of, and
Yeah.
MBSR changed my life. And the only reason I haven't gotten my certification yet is because every time there's an opportunity, it's always on a Jewish holiday.
Oh, there you go.
So I
That's
forget to
fun.
participate. But it had such a profound impact on my life. And in the same way that I like go around just, you can't, like, we observe Shabbat. You can't come to my Shabbat table without me talking about IPNB or MBSR at least one time. Like, it's gonna happen, especially if it's a new group of people.
Yes.
I will figure out a
Good.
make it part of the conversation. But, the one of the challenges with both the wheel of awareness and with MBSR practices is how do you practice those with people who are, well, you can't really practice it when someone's in a dissociative state, I think. I don't know.
Um,
Or how
well,
does that,
I'm
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 curious
trying to
about
think.
your thoughts about it because, people, well, here's how I'll preface this. People seem to be very turned off by meditation and by the idea of meditative practice.
Yeah,
They think it's kind of woo-woo,
yeah,
or that, they have this misconception, which I had going into MBSR, that you just turn your mind off.
yeah. No,
And that, oh, because I can't do that, I'm not meditating
no.
right. So, right. And really, it's about having that center of being able to come back to awareness again and again and
The
again.
practice of mindful awareness practices. So, my friend Sue Smalley, who, along with Dan Siegel, created or established the Mindful Awareness Research Center at UCLA, and they created it to study the impact of mindful awareness practices on ADHD. And so I just use the word mindful awareness practices, MAPS, right? From that institute. And so what I tell people is this, the practice of mindful awareness isn't staying here and being all Zen.
Right. And kumbaya.
It's right. That's not, I don't, maybe the Dalai Lama can stay right here all the time, but I don't think so, right? I mean, because the mind's job is to wander. It's going to always wander. So the practice isn't in staying here. The practice is when you begin, or to keep from going here. The practice is once you realize you're over here, that you bring it back. That's the neurons that fire together, wire together piece. So the more, and so the way I think of mindful awareness practice in my life today, having been, 30 years practicing, is most of the time I can, I don't even, it just comes back automatically. I can be like, oh my God, and it comes on, it's fine. You know what I mean? It's like, it's almost unnoticeable, right? It's so automatic.
But it still
Uh,
happens.
it still happens.
Happens. And I tell that, when we do, I try to help people get a bite-sized piece of, just the regular sitting practice
Yeah.
for minimum 1 minute,
Yeah.
maximum five
Yeah.
minutes in all of my classes. I tell
Yeah.
people, I'm like, if you're expecting to come into my courses and meditate for 40 minutes, this is not the class for you
And
because
you don't need 40 minutes.
40
Yeah.
look,
Yeah.
when I was taking the MBSR, right, they do
I,
ask you
I
to sit every day, right?
yeah.
So having that foundation was fantastic,
Yeah.
but I have three little kids under six.
But
Like,
that's, unless you're going to be a monk, that's not, I mean,
right,
and I think of mindful awareness practices not as a Buddhist practice. I'm not a Buddhist. I think of it as an interpersonal neurobiology practice to help me understand my mind and how I operate in the world. And your question earlier, how would I tell people to learn about interpersonal neurobiology? I think the Wheel of Awareness is a crash course in it
yeah,
because it's highly integrative and it goes through all the domains.
yeah,
And even if you don't really understand, you don't have to understand all of that to start to get the experience of how your mind and body interact
right,
and where there might be places that are stuck.
yeah.
And just when I did the MBSR training, very fortunately with John Kabat-Zinn,
See?
and I was a new meditator. It was at a retreat center in Northern California in the Redwoods. In February, it was freezing. And I had just started working on the Wheel of Awareness with Dan. So I wasn't like a diehard. I hadn't had an immersion in it. I'll just tell us very quickly. So I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And if I knew what I was getting myself into, I'm not sure I would have
Probably wouldn't have done it.
right? Which was just all day,
Yeah.
sitting, walking meditation. So I was trying, and we were in silence this one day, like 3 days in, and I was trying to break John Kabat-Zinn's code. I was trying to figure out when the next 45-minute walking meditation, because they didn't tell us how long any meditation, you just waited for the gong. And I finally, so this is what I'm thinking the whole time I'm sitting in the meditation hall. And I finally figured out the 45-minute one's next. And I found a walk in this beautiful redwood forest that I wanted to take that was a 45-minute walk. And so I did it. I was so proud of myself. And when I got back to the close to the meditation, I could say, "Oh, it's wrong." There was no one walking around. Everybody was, you could see inside the meditation hall meditating. And so I was kind of like laughing at myself. And as I got closer to the hall, I got this real feeling of like I was in trouble, like really scared. And I noticed it, right? Mind wandering. I noticed it and I thought, whoa, where is that coming from? And a little awareness came to me. You're afraid because you're in trouble, right? And I was like, I don't think John Kabat-Zinn's going to yell at me,
Right.
right, for being late, right? And then as I got even closer, I got another wave of awareness that I was angry. And I
Mm,
thought, where does that come from? And the little awareness came that said, you're angry because no one listens to you. Now that's straight out of childhood. And I laughed and I thought, of course no one's listening to me. We're in silence. No one can talk, right? And it was just such to me, it was such a great example of my mind hijacking my brain or my brain hijacking my mind. I'm not sure which one it was, but it was just so clear how my mind worked. And I think that my practice up until then of the Wheel of Awareness helped me see it more clearly instead of going back to the dorm, packing my bags and leaving because I was afraid they were going to yell at me or be mad at me for or mad at them for not listening to me. Yeah, which could have happened.
right.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so this brings up a, really important point, which is we're often operating by these messages that we receive that, I mean, I think we've said this before, that maybe have nothing to do with the now.
That's right.
But if
Implicit memory.
right,
Yeah.
but if we don't learn to like that's I think for me what meditate a big part of what meditation has been about
It's
is being able to recognize where right I have
that's right.
so that feeling that you described I'm about to get in trouble that
Yeah.
could describe my entire right. It's like, uh-oh, here it comes.
Not an uncommon feeling. Yeah.
And even so, though, something that I really want to stress for the listeners is it's not like, I think that people have this misconception that doing all of this work, the making sense of your story, that all the modalities means that like you're good and there's no challenges left in life.
Yeah. It's lifelong.
It's lifelong.
Yeah.
And but recognizing that you can handle and be
Right.
present with, and to, take another one of Dan's things, be in your
That's
window of
right.
tolerance
That's
when
right.
distressing things are coming at you. That's really the goal, is that flexibility, not
That's
the,
right.
oh, I'm good now.
Yeah,
Right?
no. And or with clients a lot, they'll say, "Oh, and I thought I'd come so far." And I'm like, "You've come so
You
far. This is not a step back. This is just
exactly.
life." Yes.
And
Yeah.
this is, I think, and I'm so happy that we're talking about this because
Yeah.
I literally just it's so fresh in my mind because I
Right.
just had a conversation with someone about this a few days ago that it's like, I don't understand why I'm feeling like this. I've had 3, 4, 5, 6 good days and now I've hit, and it's like, welcome to being human.
That's right. Welcome to being human. And we want to increase our window of tolerance for not feeling great all the time. Not feeling great doesn't mean we're not okay. It just means bad day.
Right.
You know, I just had went through I had COVID for the first time. I was at a conference in DC in March and I brought it home with me and it was a couple weeks before I knew what I had. So I didn't get the whatever the thing is. I never felt like I was going to die or anything, but it really knocked me out.
Wow.
And I had period, and I'd never had it before. And I hadn't really been sick with anything for a long time, right? So I was just, and when you're sick, or at least when I'm sick, it's hard. After a while, it's hard to remember what it feels like to not be sick. And
Yeah.
you can just see yourself going down like this rabbit hole. And I'm 72, and I'm like, oh my God, this is what life's going to be like from now on. It's like maybe I've got 10 good years. I mean, but with the mindfulness, I could come back and not practicing mindfulness, being a mindful practitioner brought it to my awareness much quicker that knows how you've got COVID. COVID is a serious illness. You're not going to die, but boy, you're sick, and you just have to accept you're sick and embrace it and stay in bed or do whatever you need to do. But it's not permanent. This is not going to be permanent.
Yeah.
And that's where the mindfulness comes in. And I had that awareness because I had a bunch of after effects, and I'd be like, oh, I thought I was over this. And I'd laugh at myself. No, you're not over it. Let's just get going, just accept it.
And
But
that
that's mindfulness.
and that's right. It's really being, so my entry point to MBSR was actually not the classic course. It was
Right.
the one that was developed by Nancy Bardacke for expecting parents.
Oh no, but so
So
brilliant.
so she took MBSR with John Kabat-Zinn and then adapted it she's a nurse,
Yeah.
adapted it to help parents preparing for childbirth. And so I did it it was the greatest gift of my
I
life.
can't even imagine. I've never given birth, but I can't imagine now that I think about it, giving birth without a mindful awareness practice and under my belt. Yes. Wow.
Interesting because, I mean, I'm like going into a different, but one of the things that's become like very popular in recent years has been, or more popularized in recent years because it's become more legally accessible, is the use of psychedelics in healing.
Yes.
And I tell everybody who asks me what I think about it is, you better have a mindfulness practice first. Go
Yes.
meditate do MBSR for 9 weeks first.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's a tool. Yes, that's right. Yes.
Because, and it's interesting because so the conference in DC was the personality was it Dan's
Yeah. Well, he did his 2 days
two
course, and
days.
then they had the psychotherapy network symposium.
So
Yeah.
I couldn't make it to the
Oh,
personalities, but I bought the live recording and I'm going back and
okay.
watching it now and doing the 6 months of class.
I was there. Yeah. You'll
So
see. Yeah.
it's interesting because I got up to the part where he like calls you out in the audience. It was great. But one of the things that, and it's so funny because I've heard him talk about the Wheel of Awareness so many times, but
Yeah.
something about the way that he said it in the 2-day course clicked for me about how, being coming from, that feeling that we get of like the bring it on.
Bring it on. It's a bring it on
You
attitude.
know,
Absolutely. Yep.
and it doesn't mean that, you know, again, it doesn't mean that things are perfect and that there's no challenge. It's
It
that
doesn't
I
make things good. It
can
just means I can handle this.
handle it.
Yes.
And that's, I don't know, when I think about what it means to be healing or be healed in certain respects, that's what I think about,
Yes.
right? If I go back to my own childhood and look at the ways that or even my adulthood,
Yeah.
even, my oldest is 6. So, like, really, the work that's been happening in the last 6.5 years has been, I mean, light years. Once you become a parent, it's like,
That-
get ready. The rocket ship is leaving.
that's right. Nothing's ever the
Your
same.
seatbelts on,
Yeah.
it's going.
Yes.
But the reason I was saying this, now I'm forgetting my train of thought. Oh, is that this open awareness that happens when you're able to be with yourself and be
Yes.
present to whatever is arising, good, bad, right, wrong,
Right.
not labeling it as any of those things.
Just is.
It just is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, it's interesting because I think that the practice is so necessary and people are so standoffish from practicing. And I think
Yeah.
that if every person integrated one
Imagine the world, especially our world today, how different it might be. Yeah.
6 seconds of mindful
Yeah.
awareness a day.
And you were talking about the distraction. So I used to be in a meditation group with some friends, and one day and they meditated for a long time. It was once a week, and I think did like a 30 or 40 minute meditation, which I do not do on a regular basis. I'm 10, 12 minutes, right? And I mean, I guess if I went to a retreat or something, I'd do more. But and one day we were like 20 minutes into a really long meditation, and the cat was in the room. Somebody's cat was in the room, and one of the meditators just broke and said, "I cannot. We're gonna have to start over. The cat's disturbing me. I've told you before, I can't meditate if you got to get the cat." And
That's
I laughed to myself because it's the whole point,
that's
right?
literally the whole
So I don't have children at home anymore. My son's grown. But I have two new dogs. They're wet rescues. In fact, I was laughing that you said your daughter looked out. My dogs are in the yard because they would be in here anyway. But sometimes on purpose, won't put them out in the morning when I first get up, which is usually when I do the wheel of awareness, because I want them to be able to be like in my face and I'm meditating. And there's a part of me that wants to say, I need to know I'm okay. It's that practice that I do not have to run off. Now if one of them started barking or biting each other, me or something, I would shift. But I can, it's that is widening my window of tolerance for being able to stay with what is.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because, my entry point into a formal meditation practice was being pregnant.
Yeah.
And then my daughter was born.
But you can't do this with
And then
kids. You can't just let your kids
can't
cry.
let your kids cry. So,
Yeah.
but if they're like what's been interesting for me, and when I was in San Diego in February, I had the opportunity to tell this to Dan and to Tina, that one of the most humbling experiences of my life has been equipping my daughters with the tools that I learned through the whole Brain Child series
Yes.
and being receptive enough when my daughter goes, "Mommy, you're flipping your lid."
I love it. It's so
But it's
great. Yes.
it's so
Yeah.
you really have that is when I really have to use that mindful
Yes.
moment of dropping in and not immediately reacting and not telling
Yes.
her you're so it's
Yeah.
like, you're right. I totally forget,
Mission accomplished. Good mom. That's look
but
what
it's
she's
but it's
embodied. Yes.
but so what's been interesting for me is like having this meditation practice is, and I maximum do 5 minutes a day at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Which,
Right.
yay.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, it's funny because when people will ask me they'll like ask me for a checklist or a prescription of things to do,
Hmm.
like start by doing a mindful awareness practice for
Yeah.
60 seconds a day for
Exactly. I say the
a
same
week,
thing.
for a week, and then see
Yes.
how you feel. And they're like, that's it?
Yeah.
Not giving me some massive
Mm-mm.
assignment? No.
No. You don't have to do any homework. You don't have to read anything. Just sit for a minute. You don't
Right.
even have to focus on just see what happens. Because
Right.
one of the things, and I sometimes with new clients, especially, I will just give them this assignment if I see that I think this would be helpful for them. One of the most illuminating parts of the wheel of awareness for me has been when I just sit and watch how my thoughts enter, how they, they are in awareness and how they leave awareness. Because what that has taught me is that my thoughts are random. Right? They really don't have a lot of meaning or intent in them. They're just coming from left, right, up, down, boom. And the minute they go, they're gone unless I hold on to them, right? And bring them from the rim to the hub. Then I'm just messed up and I'm a horrible mom or a horrible dog owner or bad therapist or I'm going to have COVID forever. Do you know, it's really just when you notice how random the process is, you don't hold on to a lot of it.
Right.
It's I love it. It's really understanding how your own, I mean, mindsight, coming to understand how your mind works and not thinking there's something wrong with the way your mind works. Yeah.
Which that I think was the most profound gift for me.
Yes.
Doing, right? Like my entry point, it's so funny because I think I said this to you before we started recording that like one of the greatest gifts of my life is that Dr. Siegel is so accessible.
Yeah.
His classes are like of that I in the last 3 years I've taken 6 classes with him, five of which, no, all 6 had live component like that. I got to spend time
Yes.
with him
It's
regularly for the last
yes.
6 years is wild. But my entry point was
Yes.
reading the books, right?
Yeah.
And I think I shared this when I interviewed him that I took the questions, the AAI style questions from Parenting from the Inside Out, and answered them using Natalie Goldberg's expressive writing technique of using first thoughts.
That's what a great idea. Yeah.
And that I teach a writing class on that now
Yeah.
and have done with hundreds of people. And I think people sometimes are like shocked by the simplicity of it
Yes.
until they start practicing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same thing with meditation, right?
Yes.
That's it. You want me to sit
That's
with this
it.
and pay attention to my thought? You want me
Yeah.
to go around the spoke and to move the spoke?
Yeah.
It's like, yes.
Yes. It's very simple.
These, people are looking for this pie in the sky
Yeah.
gold nugget thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's actually doing these things
Yes.
consistently
Yeah.
again and again.
Yeah. Yeah. And being kind to yourself during it and not and reminding yourself that if you're doing it, you're not doing it wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And something I love that John Kabat-Zinn says is as long as you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
Which, again, like for people who are living with DID or for people who are living with chronic suicidality, like that is I don't know, I think it takes time for people for that idea to integrate.
Yes.
They
Well,
feel like
absolutely. It
there's
does.
no right with
Yeah.
them, wrong with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Well, and the whole mental health world is kind of built on what's wrong with you, not, what's right with you. And again, I think one of the reasons I'm able to feel such joy about my life is because Dr. Siegel never, ever, ever framed it in anything but positivity and hope.
Yeah.
He never once said, Sally, this is never going to be okay. And I've asked him since then, did he ever worry that I wasn't going to resolve the profound trauma of my childhood? He said, no, I never did.
No.
And it took 10 years of me working with him to get there. Yeah.
And that's the other thing that I think is important for people is sometimes, you read a memoir, you listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's very neatly tied up in a bow of like,
Yeah. Well, and it's a 216-page book, right? I mean,
right. It's not,
and if I'd written a 600-page, nobody would have read it. Right?
but,
Yes.
as I'm training in a cohort now of people who are, I've been teaching this expressive writing class now for 3 years. And so it's gotten to the point though where I can't keep up with the amount of people. Like there's so many people who want to take it and I'm only one person.
Yes.
So I've been, training my students who
Teach
did
it.
this work with me for 3 years to now teach it themselves. And just a plug for anyone who's listening, we have classes coming up with our
That's
students.
great.
It's so exciting. But
That's great.
one of the interesting things with I just did a check-in group on Wednesday with two of our male facilitators, and one of them, we give the option to read our work out loud for anyone who wants.
Nice.
And one of them commented on how, it's kind of unfair to read with me because I sound so articulate, having practiced this for, 6.5 years. I'm like, you have no idea what kind of mess and
That's right.
self-absorbed or self-critical. It happens to be that tonight the direction went in a really beautiful
That's
healing place.
right. Yes.
Where were you, yesterday when I did the same practice and everything that came out was, "Rah,"
Yes, exactly.
it's
Yes.
not
But you did it the next day because you have a mindful awareness that that didn't destroy it forever and you can't ever do it again.
right.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's so funny, like what you were saying with the cat, that like the whole meditation got ruined for her and she had to
Yeah.
start over because of the cat. It's like, so when we like graduated from the parenting MBSR course, they gave us a couple of sheets with like mindful reminders, and I have them posted all over my house.
Nice.
And I have one
I'm
here.
a big believer in it. Post-its everywhere. Yes.
Have it everywhere. And so I have a list that they made for us called a list of things to remember about mindfulness. So I want to read one of them now. Every moment is new, whether we like it or not. Infinite possibility. And then in quotations, oh shit, it's now again.
It
And that's really what it is. Like, oh, it's
is.
it's a new moment. I
Yes.
can, and that's not in any way to take away from the immense overwhelm that happens when someone is living with unresolved trauma,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, you said it yourself in this conversation, Sally, that when you were sitting in session with Dr. Siegel, you were felt terrified so much of the time. It wasn't
Yeah.
like you were at peace at all.
No, 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 no. I mean, I tried in the book to show, to talk about how hard it was, right? Um, I mean, it was hard. It was one of the hardest things I ever did, but it was couched in such safety and connection. I never didn't want to. I mean, I would be in session. I'd say, I can't do this. There's no way I can do this. I can't allow this state of mind to be known because it's so horrible. And what does it mean about me? And what are you going to think of me? I mean, it could be hours, a week sometimes, right before a certain state would be able to get to be meet Dr. Siegel. I mean, it was excruciating. But I never ever thought I can't do this because for him it was doable. And I
And
wonder sometimes, like I said, I was so proud. I'm so lucky to have gotten him as my therapist. I mean, I was 37, he was 34. I mean, it was a long time ago, right?
I was,
Um,
just for context, I'm 34 now. I
okay,
was born in 1991,
that's
which
right. So yeah, I mean, so exactly. You're younger than both of our his children and my child. Because when I think about my training, my education, my master's program, and my training, I had some supervisors that I think if they'd been my therapist, and I probably would have seen them 3, 4 times a week for lengthy sessions because I was all in. I think it would have had a really different outcome for me. I got one diagnosis, right, from one therapist, and the outcome was really good. And one of my hopes for the book is that especially educational institutions and training institutions start to see DID as a good thing, not a bad thing. And at the Psychotherapy Networker Symposium, somebody asked, and I get asked this a lot, I was very privileged. I was in a very stable marriage. I had a very resourceful life, and I was able to not work and go to therapy 3, 4 times a week, very lengthy sessions. I didn't have to, all I had to do really was go to therapy and be a mom. Massive privilege. But one of the things Dan said when, they were saying, and this was also a long time ago, when this kind of thing was more, I mean, with the insurance the way it was back then, it's different. Anyway, one of the things that Dan said, and I believe it fully, and it's on the tape of this symposium workshop we did, is that, a great place, great training for new therapists and training institutions would be working with clients with DID, and being and learning about DID, before they've got all that gunk around them that says DID is bad. It'd be good for the client. It's more accessible for people with DID that can't possibly get therapy as often as they might need, and great training for new therapists because it's very comprehensive, everything you do,
yeah,
and not scary.
right. And again, that relational connection.
Yes.
I know I've already said this, but people underestimate the importance and the power of that.
Yeah. Well, and it is the main thing. That's what therapy is, isn't it? It's a relationship that, I mean, the subtitle of my book, I think, is what is it? How Dissociative Identity and the Power of the Therapeutic Bond Saved Me. Yeah.
Right. And we were saying this before that like you don't have to be a therapist with, this is even just between parents and children, like
Yes.
that relational kind of force field that we create in
Yes.
our homes and in our schools and in our community
Yeah.
institutions, like that I think makes a huge difference in
Yeah.
how, I mean, I know I'm a different person because of, being able to integrate these schools into my life.
That's right. That's right.
And it is really,
You have to be
I,
flex. You have to have real flexibility to survive as a parent. Yeah.
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 I
Yeah.
mean, and just in the world right now, like I think it's just really hard to be human
Yeah,
right
it's a
now.
mess out there, but we don't have to be a mess inside. And one of the things, and that's the key, I think, for me anyway, one of the things Dan was talking a lot about during the pandemic on the online courses he was doing was that because people were, really in the pandemic, it was terrible. It was terrible for everybody, but harder for some. And what he would, because of the uncertainty, right? And what he said was, and it's one of those things that sort of changed my life. He said, a synonym for uncertainty is possibility, right?
I've heard him say that
Yeah,
before.
I mean, it just, oh, wow, possibility. So whenever I'm like, oh my God, this isn't going to happen, I don't know what, no possibility. Anything's possible. Yeah.
I'm actually rewriting that down as we're
Yeah. A good one.
because it really, but I also think that shows the power, that change is possible, right?
Always.
One of the, one of
Change
the,
is, I mean, change is not only always possible, it's always happening. I mean, that's neuroplasticity,
right.
right? Yeah.
Sometimes I'll speak to people and they're like, it's impossible. I've been so unwell for so many years. There's no way
Yeah.
for me to get better. And
Not
I disagree.
true.
I don't ever shame them for feeling that way because
No.
you've tried multiple therapists, multiple medications, multiple
Yeah.
diagnoses. It can feel very
Yeah.
hopeless.
Yeah.
So I don't ever try to say, oh, no, no, of course, that's the wrong way to think. I
That's
honor
right.
that experience for them, but I also don't believe that that's true.
And this is where understanding like mindsight, right? And
Right.
neuroplasticity. So if I have a client who's hopeless, and we'll talk about it, and I'll say, what if we here, I say, I'll explain, and I'm not a neuroscientist, I'm not a researcher, I am not an academic. So this is my very inside out, from the inside out understanding of neuroplasticity, which is our brain is changing with every breath, right? So we can choose whether we are going to be aware of it. And this is where mindfulness is essential, right? And to have a mindful way of living is to be able to be aware of where our mind is going. And if every time we go to, oh, it's just hopeless, when I become aware of that, then I go, no, it's not hopeless. Sometimes it feels that way, but truly there's lots of hope. I mean, I correct it. That's neuroplasticity. That's harnessing the power of neuroplasticity so that I'm going to have a mental model that says, no, things are hopeful, right? Even when they're hopeless, it's hopeful. But if I'm always just saying it's hopeless, it's hopeless, it's hopeless, then it's just going to be hopeless.
Strengthening that pattern, right?
That's
That's
right.
the feedback you're giving your
That's
mind,
right.
your brain.
So so our brain's going to change no matter what. Now that we know about neuroplasticity, we know we can harness the power of that,
Right.
right?
Right. It really, I think I said, I think I said this before today that like people ask me how I do my job because it's,
Yeah.
well, I have a lot of hope. But I've
Yes,
also seen people go from not thinking they were going to live to see the next day
that's right.
to now working as volunteers on our hotline,
I
on our
hope so. Great. Yeah.
so it just
And this is the wheel of awareness too. It's like being able to, as a therapist or as a caregiver, right? To be able to keep those really difficult things, up on the rim of the wheel of awareness and not bring them in. You can be aware of them and you can stay with your client, right? And be connected and create a level of connection that creates some safety for them without it doing you in so that you can get up in the morning and do it again.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And part of that for me, I'm sure you've noticed is the Lego.
Yes. I
That's how
got
I
that.
do that is that the decompression at the end of the day is
I love it. Oh my God, that's so I didn't realize they were Legos.
they're
There's
all Lego. It's all Lego, all of it. And there's a whole nother shelf that you can't
I love it.
as not.
I love it.
Okay.
The house from that movie, Up.
Right, from Up. So I actually just finished the Disney Castle yesterday. I like I had like an
Oh,
hour.
I'm gonna go get that. That
So
sounds so
I
fun.
had an hour yesterday where like my one of my daughters was home sick from school, but she was napping, and both my babies were napping at the same time, and it was quiet
Yay.
at work. I was like, you know what, I really want to. I'm trying to catch up on the recordings of the 2 days from the DC conference,
Right.
so that I'm up to date with everything. So I was like, great, I'll listen for. So I literally sat there with my Lego set watching.
And this
Um,
is great.
but okay, can I share a story with you that happened this week about hope?
Yes, please.
I had some, it's so funny because it happens to be that this week I found myself with like more free time than I usually have. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna go to I haven't been to Barnes and
I
Noble.
did too somehow this week. It just unfolded in a way that was, and instead of, 10 years ago, I would have been like, oh my God, what am I don't have any clients this week. I'm not a good therapist. I'm never gonna, yeah. But I was like, oh, good. No, I'm gonna go to Barnes and Noble. I'm gonna have lunch with a friend. Exactly.
Te-
Yeah.
7 years ago, if I didn't have any workshops or anything lined up, I'd be like, oh my God,
I'm a
it's over.
failure.
I'm a
Yeah.
failure. People are gonna see right through me.
There's no hope.
There's no hope for me. Even me, I'm in the position of helping people. I'm like, nope, that's it. My
That's,
career's over.
yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
well. And it
Yeah.
was so interesting because I like, turned that part of, I kind of turned it off and I was like, I'm gonna go enjoy. And guess what? When I looked at my phone an hour later, there was plenty of work to do. I,
Exactly. There's always plenty of work to
right? I
do.
could have been sitting there twiddling my thumbs. Why is there nothing to do? Why is it right? That was a very common experience for me for so much
Yeah.
of my life.
Yeah.
So, but I went into Barnes and Noble and I went to check out the books that I was buying, and they've released over the years different art sets. So they have different pieces by Van Gogh made into Lego.
I
Um,
didn't know. I mean,
yeah.
this is when you don't have kids, you don't know this stuff.
So it was so I think it was like
Oh,
around
I'm going to Barnes and Noble this weekend. That's
around my
hysterical.
30th birthday, I really felt the burnout of like my own healing work. I was doing like all of my own trauma work simultaneously to doing all the suicide prevention work. It was just there was a lot of heaviness and I was like, I need more levity. But it was also the pandemic and I couldn't go a lot of places and my
Yeah.
was new, brand new, a newborn. And my husband was like, he's a big Lego person. He's like, why don't you try building Lego? I mean, little did he know that I would become a fanatic. But so my sibling, I love sunflowers. Sunflowers are the official flower of the Long Short Road
Yeah.
because they resemble, to me, they
Oh,
define
yeah. Okay. Your logo.
what
Yes.
Costco is, right? And so my siblings bought me the sunflowers. So I'm in Barnes Noble checking out, and I'm talking to the guy at the counter, and I, was like, "Oh, Lego, I have that set." Da, da, da. And we started talking, and wouldn't you know, we immediately got into a conversation about mental health and suicide prevention. And he was a survivor of multiple suicide attempts.
Wow.
And he said to me, he was like, tell everyone you meet that healing is possible and that I could tell you healing is possible. And
Yes.
again, I was like, I just started crying in the checkout
Yes.
at Barnes and Noble.
Yes.
But it just,
Because it's out there. We need to, but we can't keep it secret.
right.
Right. Yes.
And I was wondering about that when I was prepping, I was like, was that the impetus for writing the memoir? Was like,
Hope.
or like just making it more
Yes.
accessible to people to
Yes.
understand that healing is possible.
Yes, okay. For many years, I was, playing around with writing a book about my story. But I was writing the story of my childhood and my family. And after this course with Dan, I realized, no, the story is my healing,
Right.
right? And that it is 100% not possible. And one of the things I love about my book is I think well, for me, it shows that it was an unfolding. There was not one moment where Dan and I said, "Okay, we're integrated," or like magical, there was no ceremony. It was an unfolding, and I was thinking about it earlier today or last night, I can't remember, about how before I had awareness that I had different states of mind, it was just like something deeply hidden inside of me that I was terrified around. Then when I started seeing Dr. Siegel, it was terrifying as I got to know them to acknowledge or to ever let him have access to it, right? And then it started becoming known to him. And then they started becoming known to me. And then they started becoming known to each other, right? And then it was just, okay, here we are. And then it was just me, right? So I mean, it was just truly this. I mean, it took 10 years, 7 years, an unfolding of through relationships. So all these different states of mind, what they needed was a different connection than they had had that created them. They needed Dr. Siegel and then me to come along to be open and accepting and loving and not, and some of them I was so scared to know about, but the minute they arrived, the minute I got to know them, I was like, oh yeah, they're mad, but they're like 5 and mad,
Wow.
you know? It's like being afraid of your 6-year-old having a meltdown. It's like being a therapist and I can't deal with a 6-year-old having a meltdown. It's dangerous. No, it isn't.
Wow. I mean, I think that's like shocking news to a lot of parents,
Yes. Yes.
but it's not.
It's
Again,
not.
like I really my daughter just had her kindergarten graduation a few weeks ago, and so we were talking about like what kind of gifts are we getting for all the teachers, and I was like, my not so secret agenda to get the whole brain child into every household in America.
It's a great. I mean, I give it as a baby present. All my
I
friends' kids
really
are having, yeah,
literally same.
yeah,
Every friend of mine who has a baby,
yeah,
that's for they get a hot
yeah.
meal and a copy of that book.
That's right.
And it was so funny because one of her teachers came over to me and she was like, I have been eyeing this book for so
Yeah.
long. And I was like, listen, I really have an agenda here because
Yes.
that I think was one of the most, for me doing my own healing, what was interesting was reading The Whole Brain Child. My daughter was so young when I read it. I mean, I read it the first time when my niece was
Right.
12 years ago, but then reading it when my daughter was a newborn, a lot of it didn't,
Yeah.
drop in yet the
Yes.
way it did for me to be able to make sense of my own childhood.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's what happens to the brain.
That.
That's what I'm not like a terrible person.
Yeah. No,
This is
you're
just how my brain was and my mind was reacting to like
that's
insane
right.
situations.
And once you understand it, you can change it
Exactly.
or modify it, let's
Or
say. Yeah.
modify.
Yeah.
Right. And I tell people, when people come into our writing program, it's called Writing to Heal. So they're like, oh, am I going to be healed by the end of this? I'm like, we're making sense of what happened.
Yes.
You cannot go back and draw a magic eraser over your past.
No, you can't change it, but you can change your relationship to it.
And
And
you
it's
can
yeah,
agency over the present by understanding that you don't have to be held prisoner by your
that's
past.
right. It's that's what I really wanted to show that you don't have to be held prisoner by your past. It's not meant to be a lifelong prison trauma of even trauma like I had. Not meant to, it doesn't have to be. It absolutely doesn't have to be.
It just is so hopeful like this conversation has been so hopeful for me.
Oh,
And
I'm
it's
so
like, I
glad.
know the people who are, some of the listeners who we get regular feedback for, I'm like, I'm so excited for them to listen to this because I just, I never want people to feel like in any way I'm negating the pain that they're going through because
No, 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 the
I
pain's
think that
real.
living with unresolved trauma is so real. And I've been there
Yeah.
and I've lived it and it's not pleasant.
No, it's
And,
the
I'm
pain is so,
so intense.
so hard and so real
Yeah.
and debilitating.
Yes.
But as a therapist, if you don't know that it can be healed, it's a real disservice to your
I
clients.
agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think even as like community members, if we
Yeah.
treat people who are, or family members, if we treat people who are living with, you know, really, really challenging issues,
Yeah.
if we can't meet them with compassion
Yes.
and,
And not make fun of them,
right,
you know?
right,
I mean, even I wrote a piece for the Psychotherapy Networker in I think it was their March, it was either February, January, March, April issue, which was about dissociation. And one of the things I talked about in it was, I kind of go through my whole story, and then I'm gone through school, and now I'm a therapist. And like all these years later, it was just last year, I turned on television, I'm watching the late night show with Stephen Colbert, and it was a skit that was in response to when President Trump said because of the tariffs that well little girls don't need 20 dolls, they can just they just need 4 or just 2, right? So the skit was multiple personality DID Barbie. And it, and the audience was roaring. It was Barbie like crazy and too much makeup and crazy and with a knife and sleeping with Ken. I mean, it was all crazy Barbie. And I just thought, still, this 2025 it was, and here we are. still completely misunderstanding. And let's not even say it's misunderstanding DID. It's misunderstanding the impact of child abuse,
Right.
right? And in our world today, to have any lack of awareness of that child abuse exists on a huge level and the impact of it, is what's wrong with that? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I
Yeah.
think, right, I know I've said this, but like we really underestimate that, right? But I think it's in the power of showing up. Dan and Tina say history is not destiny.
No, it is not.
And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
exactly it. It's like it doesn't take away from the profound impact that trauma and abuse can have on
Right.
a person. But
No,
no,
I mean, I can't tell you how many times in my therapy with Dan when I would be like, I can't know this. I can't know this. I can't know. I mean, it could be days, right? And I can't know this. And so if you can imagine, if I'm knowing something internally and can't let it appear and talk and work in therapy, the days in between are just, I'm shut down. It's not good. And Dan would always say at some point, he'd say, Sally, it's all you've already survived. I would be afraid that it was going to kill me. And I don't necessarily mean that it was going to kill me, kill me. It wasn't in a suicide way. It was, I am not strong enough to know this and handle this. And he would always remind me that I'd already survived it. You've already survived it. And that was like, wow, yes, this isn't happening again. I'm just
right,
remembering it.
which I think for especially for survivors of abuse,
Yeah.
right? And this is something that I think you and Dan touched on in the conversation that you had when the book came out about the misinformation of like planted memories or like
Yeah. Implanted memories. Yeah. False memories.
that false memories that a lot of times when victims of abuse first make a disclosure
Yeah.
15 years after the fact, they're like, oh well, you
They
saw
made
that on
it.
a TV show and you made it up,
Yeah.
right? And that
Instead of it happened when you were 4 and you couldn't tell anybody.
exactly
Yeah.
right. And the belittlement that
Yeah.
shuts down survivors' ability to
Yeah.
heal.
Yeah.
And we are doing a disservice, I think,
Yeah.
by not, you
Yeah.
know,
And,
allowing for that to be known,
yeah.
to really understand what an impact that has.
And that's another reason why interpersonal neurobiology is so crucial and that it's not being taught. Look, I live in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. There's universities everywhere, right? There's UNC, there's Duke, there's State, there's Wake Forest, there's Davidson, there's huge universities. And so far as I can tell, none of them are teaching a class in interpersonal neurobiology. And to me, that is such a disservice. It is such a disservice because if nothing else, what interpersonal neurobiology teaches is you need to be an informed therapist, not a manualized therapist. Yeah.
And a relational human.
And a relational human. You have to understand something about yourself too. Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
I think one of the funniest experiences for me I'm not a licensed professional yet. Like I got into suicide prevention with the intention of, let me get trained in whatever I can get trained in now while I'm going to graduate school. But then like life happened and I've been
Three
running,
kids.
right? I have 3 kids and I've been running a nonprofit for 6 years.
Yeah.
So it's not, right? But one of the funniest things for me is like, how am I going to go to grad school having like well over 100 hours already of having learned intensely with Dan? Like, what is that going to
No, it's going to be, that's like me, right? I was like,
That's why I asked you that question because
no,
it's like I've done the 36-hour course.
no,
I've done like it's so funny because somebody asked me once, like, don't you ever get tired of these trainings? I was like, never.
no, not of his trainings.
Not of his training.
No, no.
No way.
Well, some of it'll be dull, dull, dull because some of
Right.
it's just archaic, in my opinion, or it should be one short course, right? The history of mental health. But you'll just be that much more enlightened,
Right.
that much more enlightened, and you can spread what you know around more. Yeah,
That's really
yeah,
what I really am like. I tell it's so funny because I really it's had such an impact on my life that it doesn't make sense to me that it's not at the forefront of every therapeutic
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like yeah.
And that people think it's more complicated than it is, or that you have to take an anatomy course in the brain. You don't. All you need is this. This is right. Yeah, the
I tell
hand
people,
model.
like I tell, even my single friends who aren't married who don't have kids, and like start with a whole brain child. Like that's literally
Yeah, Or
Yeah.
parenting from the inside out. I mean, I've told Dan I think they should re-release it as being a person from the inside
I,
out. I mean, it's incredible.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. It's really, I just, that's, yeah, I like my great hope is that in a few years from now that
Yeah.
changes and it
I
is
hope so
much
too.
more because I've seen I mean, I'm a different person than I was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And like I said this to someone recently and she was like, "Well, you were the one who you integrated all of the work."
Yeah.
It's like, but also like the fact that this is accessible and available and like it should be more, you know,
Yeah, I learned something every time I take a course with Dan or am with him in any way because I mean for other reasons also he's just on top of everything, all the new findings, and he is such a great integrator, an integrative teacher. I
sometimes
always learn something new and have a
I sit
deeper
there
understanding.
I just need to keep track of which books he's recommending.
Yes,
Because he'll throw out so many books in one
yes,
conversation. I'm like,
yes.
literally, that was a 2 hour class, and I came out with 15 new books I need to read.
Yeah, that's very
But
funny.
yeah, it's yeah. Okay, my last question for you, going back to this theme of hope,
Mhm.
is do you have a message of hope for anyone who's listening right now who's really in the thick of the messiness
Yeah.
feeling?
So, yes, I mean, first of all, since my book has come out, I've gotten so many private messages from, people I've never met that have DID, and some not with, and therapists that some and a lot of therapists with DID who are working with people with DID who my book has given them hope, right? That healing is possible. And I know I'm not the only person out there that's healed from DID. And I hope more people will talk about it, that it is a very healable condition, because it's not a disorder. It's an adaptation. But 100%, everything I know about having had DID, about having had therapy with Dan, about being an interpersonal neurobiologist, and I think now an interpersonal neurobiology educated educator. That's the whole point. It's all about hope. I mean, that's what interpersonal neurobiology teaches us. Hope is the thing. Yes. Yeah.
Hope is the
Hope
thing.
is the thing. Yeah. And it's what keeps me. Do we have to, the whole thing about what we now know is that those nine functions of the prefrontal cortex, right, which is the human part of the brain, overlap. This is what Dan talks about. These nine functions of the prefrontal cortex overlap, which make us thoughtful human beings, overlap with the outcome of secure attachment.
Right,
Okay, in childhood.
right.
Okay, we now know through MBSR, through John Kabat-Zinn and Richie Davidson's research, long ago, and now they've just built on it. Everybody's building on it, is that the nine functions of the prefrontal cortex that overlap with the outcome of security of attachment in childhood also overlap with the outcome of a mindful awareness practice. And
Right.
as a result of those studies, the adult attachment research people, Mary Main and Eric Hesse, may they rest in peace, created a new category of adult attachment, which is earned. They called it earned. Dan now calls it learned. So earned, learned, secure attachment. And I for sure have a earned, learned, secure attachment. And I think what Dan said was that when they give somebody the adult attachment interview, the measure of and you measure a secure on the adult attachment interview as an adult, they can't tell the difference whether you got the secure attachment as a child or earned as an adult.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's hope, right?
Yeah.
Because secure attachment is the
Is
thing. That's right. That's what we
it's
all
the
want.
foundation for everything that
That's
comes. And it's so funny because I know we're like coming to the end of our
right,
time,
right.
but that's something that is so, one of the things that I try to really get across to people. And I tell people, I'm like, you don't necessarily have to find an AAI skilled therapist who could
Yeah,
do the adult. I mean, if you want to do the formal
right.
attachment interview, great. Read any of the AI styled questions in any of
That's
Dan's
right.
books and
Yeah.
answer them.
In Parenting from the Inside Out and in
Great.
Brainstorm,
That's my favorite person to give.
yeah. Brainstorm is brilliant.
I
Yes.
I really, I'm telling you, my not so secret agenda. As soon as my sister was old
Yes.
enough to read that book, she's 18 now. I was like, here, I'm just putting it in your bedroom.
Yes. I mean,
Even
it's
if it,
essential.
even
It's
if it hangs out there
yes.
forever and you whatever you pick up and read I don't care. Like
Yeah.
but I this is I think one of the most important pieces to get across that the insecurity that was, developed through the relational experience in childhood that doesn't have to be the way.
It's not so it's a verb, not a noun,
Right.
right? And we are verbs, right? We are and we are always in motion and change is always possible.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I think drives me a little crazy about, the like pop culturalization
Yeah.
of therapeutic, like people will tell me, "Oh, I'm an anxious attached," right? No, 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 no.
Not how it works.
That's how
It's
it works.
such a
And that's
yeah.
something that I've actually asked Dr. Siegel about because it's like that's something that I bump up against a lot is people will be
Yeah.
like, "Oh, well, I'm like, well, you developed that attachment stance to that person in your
That's right.
it's
Right.
not
You can change it
you can
with awareness. Yes. It doesn't make you an anxious person. It doesn't make you an insecure person. It's language. That's all it is.
right. And I think that what
And
happens
it's a measure. It's a measure.
and a lot of people use it as another way to pathologize themselves. Oh,
Yes.
relationships don't work out because I had
Because I
your attachment. I'm
yeah. And
insecure.
my husband is avoidant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like,
It's not
that's
how it works.
works.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is the change is possible.
I mean, the truth is we're changing no matter what.
Right.
And if we can harness the power of neuroplasticity, we get to direct the change in a way that we want it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of it just being random.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, amen. Exactly. Yes. Nice.
Ellie, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been a delight. Yes.
And I
And if
encourage
you make it
everyone.
if you make it to Oxford, Dan and I are going to present in Oxford in September.
It's so funny because he just shared that in the monthly live Q&A last week. And I literally was looking at the calendar. I was like, how do I justify getting away from,
I know.
right?
It's
Like
a long
going,
way to go.
it's
Yeah.
a, it's, one day, but that's why I was so intent on making it to San Diego. Cause I was like,
Yeah.
there's my, herein lies my opportunity. Not
Yes.
maybe not the only one, but a opportunity and
And
opportunity.
and Dan and Tina together are so great. They're so dynamic. Yeah.
I think also watching that like 30 years later,
Yes.
Tina still looks at him with the same reverence of the teacher that she had 30 years ago. I was like, these are people who are living, the values that they put in all of their books.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's why I, will geek out on all of this stuff all day long.
That's right. Yes. Yes. It's interpersonal neurobiology in action. It is. You
Exactly.
can see it. Yes.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you so much, Sally.
Thank you. You take care.
Thank you for tuning in to Heart to Heart. If you or someone you love is struggling, please know there is hope and help is within reach. Since 2019, the Long Short Road has been walking alongside at-risk individuals, offering trauma-informed programs, a non-emergency hotline, and a community that fosters healing. No one has to go through this alone, and we are here for you. Discover how the Long Short Road is changing lives. Visit www.thelongshortroad.com or email us at info@thelongshortroad.com to learn more. You can be part of this mission. Sponsorship opportunities for Heart to Heart are available. Honor a loved one, support your community, and help us make mental wellness resources accessible to those who need them most. Until next time, remember, love and connection are the greatest healers. This is Lee Yaffe reminding you, hope is here, healing is possible, and you are never alone. Together, we're walking this long, short road to a brighter future.